Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're going deep on the news out of North Korea and their latest missile test. Just skimming these articles you sent over, it's giving serious spy thriller vibes.
Yeah, no, you're not wrong. This launch is definitely raising eyebrows all over the world. And
Yeah.
it's not just the usual posturing, there are some really unusual things about this one that make it feel like things could be changing in the region.
Gotcha. So let's start with what we know for sure. North Korea launched a brand new ICBM on October 30th, 2024. And it's not just them saying it happened. South Korea and Japan both confirmed it. But honestly, it's not just the launch itself, right? That's got everyone talking.
Exactly. The thing is, this missile was up in the air for 87 minutes. That's
Yeah.
a record for them. The longest flight time they've ever recorded?
Mm-hmm.
Almost an hour and a half.
87 minutes.
Oh,
Jeez.
yeah.
Just enough time to make coffee and really worry about what it all means.
Yeah.
But seriously, what's that tell us? Does it just mean they're getting better at launching, or is it something bigger?
It's not just about distance. This long flight time tells us their missile tech might have made some real leaps. These aren't just simple rockets. These are complicated systems. Every extra minute in the air means they could be getting a lot more capable.
Right. So it's not about how far, but also how advanced the tech behind it is. Okay, so walk me through this test. Did they just pick a direction and fire away?
Not exactly. They used a lofted trajectory. Basically, they shoot it almost straight up really high, then it comes down.
Right.
It reached 7,000 kilometers up and traveled about 1,000 horizontally.
So basically, they're seeing how high and far they can push it without actually aiming at another country. It's smart, but also kind of scary. Why even test a missile if you're not aiming it at anything?
There are a few reasons, actually. It lets them test the full capabilities of the missile, like range and engine performance and how it handles at different heights.
Mhm.
They can do that without immediately upsetting other countries, by flying over them, basically flexing their muscles without crossing a line.
Makes sense. So they're checking out the engine, the range, the whole 9 yards, but doing it in a way to minimize any immediate blowback. It's clever, but also kind of like playing with fire.
Exactly. And to make things even more interesting, South Korean analysts think this missile may have used a new solid fuel booster. Now, this is where things get interesting.
Okay, now I'm really curious, why is this solid fuel thing such a big deal? Does it just make the missile go faster?
It's more about being sneaky and ready to go. Solid fuel missiles are way easier to move around and launch compared to liquid fuel ones. They can be fueled up ahead of time, ready to go at a moment's notice, making them super hard to spot and intercept. It's a total game changer for their military.
So we're talking a missile that's tougher to track, tougher to stop before launch,
Yeah,
and maybe even more advanced than anything we've seen? That's a serious development.
yeah, it definitely raises the stakes. And we can't forget Kim Jong-un himself was there for this launch.
Oh yeah, that's right. I read he was actually there, watching it take off. This wasn't just some regular test run. What does that tell us?
Him being there is never just for show. If he's personally involved, it usually means something big is happening, or a shift in their strategy. He's sending a message to his people and the world.
So he's making a statement, for sure.
Hmm.
But what's the message? Did he actually say anything?
He did. According to their news agency, he gave a direct warning to his enemies. He talked about recent actions that he says are making things tense and threatening North Korea's safety. He called this launch a justified military response to those threats.
So basically he's saying, don't mess with us or else.
Yeah.
And knowing their history, that's not an empty threat.
Yeah, you're right. And of course, the international community has responded quickly. The U.S. condemned it right away, calling it a clear violation of UN resolutions and saying it's destabilizing an already tense region.
Yeah, no surprise there. But this isn't happening in a vacuum, right? There's a lot going on in the world that could be playing into this. What else do we need to be thinking about?
Definitely. There are a few key pieces to this puzzle, and one of them is a possible connection between North Korea and Russia, especially with what's going on in Ukraine.
Wait, North Korea and Russia. How are they connected?
Well, first off, this launch happens at the same time as all these reports about North Korea maybe supplying weapons to Russia. Actually, the U.S. Defense Secretary confirmed North Korean troops wearing Russian uniforms and gear are moving towards Ukraine.
Seriously? So are we talking North Korean troops fighting alongside Russians in Ukraine? That changes things a lot.
Absolutely. And South Korean intelligence says over 11,000 North Korean troops have been sent to Russia. More than 3,000 are stationed near active combat zones in Western Russia. This isn't just symbolic. It means they're cooperating and involved.
So help me out here. Why would North Korea get involved in a war so far away? What's their motivation?
It's complicated, but some experts think this missile launch could be their way of showing they're not backing down from anyone, and it signals they're getting closer to Russia, like they're saying, we've got powerful friends.
Right, classic power move.
Hmm.
But what's in it for North Korea? What do they gain from supporting Russia? What's the end game?
That's the big question. Some people think Russia might be helping North Korea with their missile tech in exchange for their support. Like a global, you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours kind of thing.
Hold on, so Russia might be helping North Korea build even stronger weapons. Why would they do that? What's in it for them?
If that's true, and it's something intelligence agencies are watching closely, it would be a huge problem for a few reasons. First, it would mean North Korea's military gets a major upgrade, making them a much bigger threat in the region. And second, it would make an already unstable situation even more unstable.
Okay, so let me get this straight. We've got North Korea maybe giving Russia weapons,
Yeah.
Russia maybe helping them with their missile tech, and this latest test, which now seems like way more than just testing new equipment. Is there anything else we need to consider to understand this?
Oh, there's a few more things. For years, North Korea has been under pressure from the international community because of their nuclear and missile programs. They've got sanctions against them, everyone's condemning them, and they're isolated. This launch could be a reaction to all that.
So they're feeling cornered and lashing out.
It's one way to look at it. And we can't ignore the timing of this either. It's happening right before the U.S. presidential election. And North Korea has a history of doing provocative things around elections. Maybe they're trying to influence things or gain some leverage for future negotiations.
So they're using this launch to get attention and insert themselves into the global conversation, maybe even affect the U.S. election. That's a big gamble.
It's high stakes for sure. And remember, North Korea has a history of using these kinds of actions to get concessions from the rest of the world. They've done it before, and they might be trying to do it again.
So this launch is a bargaining chip for future negotiations, a way to force the world to listen to their demands.
That's one interpretation.
Yeah.
And it's definitely working. This launch is all over the news and has put North Korea back in the global spotlight.
This is starting to feel like a high-stakes chess game. North Korea is making bold moves, and everyone else is scrambling to figure out how to respond. What are the possible consequences of all this? Where could this lead?
The biggest worry right now is that things could escalate. This could easily get out of control and lead to a military conflict, and that would be devastating. And with nuclear weapons involved, it's more dangerous than ever.
That's terrifying.
Yeah.
What can we do to stop that from happening? Is there any way to calm things down?
Diplomacy is key. The world needs to engage with North Korea, but from a strong and united front. It's a balancing act, showing we're serious, but also keeping communication open.
So don't give in to their demands, but still try to find a peaceful solution.
Exactly. Sanctions relief could be offered if they agree to denuclearize and stop their missile program. But that's a long shot, and there's no guarantee it'll work. It's going to be a long and difficult road.
So we're stuck in this dangerous situation with North Korea pushing the limits and everyone trying to contain them. What's your take on all this? What stands out to you as the most important takeaway so far?
This whole thing is a reminder of how complicated and interconnected global politics really is. We can't look at North Korea on its own. We have to consider their relationship with Russia, the tensions in the region, and everything else happening in the world.
Like a tangled web, pull on one thread, and it affects everything else.
Exactly. And this web is getting more tangled. This latest missile test has definitely shaken things up in the global balance of power.
It really is a tangled web. And with all this talk about Russia and North Korea maybe teaming up, it makes you wonder, have they always been close?
That's interesting. Their relationship has had its ups and downs. They were pretty tight during the Cold War. The Soviet Union gave a lot of help to North Korea, both money and military stuff. But things cooled off when the Soviet Union collapsed.
So the breakup kind of put a strain on things. So what changed? Why are they getting closer now?
Well, they both see the United States as a problem, and they've both been pushed away by the West, especially with those sanctions on Russia after they invaded Ukraine. They're both feeling kind of ganged up on, which has brought them closer.
Right. Common enemies and shared complaints make for strange friends. But this is more than just shared interests, right? We're talking maybe a military alliance with North Korea sending troops to fight with the Russians in Ukraine. That's serious.
Absolutely. And it might not stop there. Some people think Russia wants access to North Korea's old Soviet weapons, things like artillery shells and rockets. Russia's running low on those as the war goes on.
Wow. So North Korea is like a Cold War weapons museum that Russia can raid. That's wild. But what about that tech swap we talked about earlier? What does North Korea get out of this? Why risk making the West even angrier by getting involved in this war?
That's the million-dollar question. Some reports say Russia might be giving them advanced military tech in exchange for their help. Stuff like missile guidance systems, satellite tech, even knowledge about nuclear weapons.
If that's true, it's a big problem.
Right.
It would make North Korea's military way stronger, and that could destabilize the whole region. It's like they're playing a dangerous game of catch-up with technology.
And that game could completely change who has the power in the region. Think about it. If North Korea gets better missile tech, they could threaten not just South Korea and Japan, but even U.S. bases in the Pacific.
And that brings us back to this missile test. It feels like a warning, a way to show off what they can do and how tight they are with Russia.
Yeah, it's hard to see it any other way. The timing, Kim Jong-un's message, the possible tech advances, it all points to a calculated move to show strength and send message.
It's a dangerous game they're playing, one that could have really bad consequences for everyone.
And don't forget about the people who are suffering. The people in North Korea are already living under a brutal regime, and this military buildup will just take away resources from their basic needs. And of course, the war in Ukraine is still killing people and causing so much suffering.
It's a reminder that behind all the global power games, there are real people whose lives are being shattered by these decisions.
You're absolutely right. And it shows how urgently we need a peaceful solution, one that focuses on peace and stability for the whole world, not just the region.
But with all this tension and mistrust, is a peaceful solution even possible?
It's a huge challenge. But history shows us that even the worst conflicts can end through talking and diplomacy. We just need to create the right conditions for real negotiations.
So what would that look like? What needs to happen to get everyone talking?
Well, everyone needs to be willing to calm things down. That means stopping provocative actions, toning down the tough talk, and finding ways to trust each other. It also means committing to finding common ground and being willing to compromise.
Easier said than done, right? We've seen diplomacy with North Korea fail before. What makes this time different?
True, it won't be easy. But the stakes are higher now than ever. The consequences of a nuclear war are just too awful to imagine. That alone might be enough to push everyone towards a more reasonable approach.
So we're just hoping for the best.
It's more than just hoping. The world can help create the right environment for talks. That means offering incentives for North Korea to get rid of their nukes and stop their missile program, easing sanctions if they take real steps towards peace, and keeping communication open between everyone involved.
Sounds like a long and delicate process, one that needs patience, persistence, and some serious diplomatic skills.
Yeah, there's no quick fix here,
Yeah.
but it's the only way forward that gives us a chance for a lasting peace.
Okay, so we've talked about the scary possibility of North Korea and Russia joining forces, the risks of them sharing tech, and how things could get much worse. But let's switch gears for a second. You mentioned before that North Korea has used these kinds of provocations to try and get things from the West. What are they looking for this time?
That's a good question. They've got a long list of demands. But some of the main ones are sanctions, relief security guarantees, and being recognized as a nuclear power. They also want the U.S. to reduce its military presence in the area and to officially end the Korean War.
That's a lot to ask for. But are they serious about negotiating? Or is this just a way to stall for time and keep developing their nuclear program?
It's tough to say. They've broken promises and backed out of agreements before, but that doesn't mean we should give up on talking to them. Engagement, even if it's hard, is always better than ignoring them and fighting.
So we need to be firm, but keep the door open for discussion.
Exactly. And we need to really understand what motivates them and be creative in finding solutions that address their concerns while keeping everyone in the region and the world safe.
It's a tightrope walk, for sure. But the other option, a conflict with nuclear weapons, is too terrifying to even think about.
Absolutely. The stakes are incredibly high.
This deep dive is living up to its name. We've uncovered so much complexity, from missile tech to global power plays. But what does it all mean for the average person? Why should someone who's not a foreign policy expert care about what's happening on the other side of the world?
That's a great question. It might seem far away, but this situation could affect everyone. A major conflict with nuclear weapons would have consequences for the whole world. Economic problems, global instability, even a nuclear winter that could threaten humanity.
That's a scary thought. It makes the news feel a lot more real and closer to home. But with everything so complicated, it's easy to feel powerless. What can we do to make a difference? Is there anything we can do besides just staying informed?
Staying informed is a great first step. By understanding what's really going on, we can have real conversations, hold our leaders accountable, and push for peaceful solutions.
So it's not just sitting back and analyzing, it's about being part of the conversation and pushing for peace. What can people actually do?
There are a few things. First, support those organizations working on conflict resolution and sending aid to the region. Even small donations help.
Okay, that's a start. What else?
Reach out to your elected officials. Let them know that diplomacy and peaceful solutions are important to you. Tell them to support efforts to talk to North Korea and create policies that promote stability in the region.
So make our voices heard and remind our leaders that peace is a priority. Got it. Anything else?
Call out misinformation and warmongering when you see it. Encourage dialogue and understanding.
Yeah.
Share accurate information and talk to people even if they disagree with you.
It's about being informed citizens and promoting a culture of peace, both locally and globally. This deep dive has been really eye-opening. We went from a missile test to uncovering all these geopolitical moves, potential alliances, and high-stakes diplomacy. It's a lot to take in.
Yeah, it is. And honestly, we've just scratched the surface of a very complicated issue. But I think the main takeaway is that there's still hope. There are ways to achieve peace, but it takes everyone being aware and engaged and committed to finding solutions that work for everyone.
You've given us a lot to think about, and I'm sure we'll be talking about this again as things develop. But before we wrap up, is there anything else our listeners should keep in mind as they follow this story?
Yeah, I think it's really important to remember that there are different perspectives here. North Korea sees themselves as defending themselves, responding to what they see as threats from the U.S. and its allies. We might not agree with their actions, but understanding their point of view is crucial if we want to find a real solution. We need to see the human side of this conflict, even when it's hard.
That's a good point. There's always more to the story than what we see at first glance. We can't just write North Korea off as crazy or unpredictable. They have their own reasons, their own fears, and their own goals, just like any other country.
Exactly. And it's important to be careful of those simple explanations and easy answers. Things are changing all the time. There's new information coming out every day, and we need to keep up.
So stay curious, stay informed, and stay engaged. This deep dive has been a great lesson in understanding how complicated international relations are and why it's important to be an informed citizen. Thank you for walking us through all of this.
It was my pleasure.
To our listener, we hope this deep dive has helped you understand the situation in North Korea and what it means for the world. Remember, knowledge is power, and informed citizens are the key to a peaceful world. Until next time, keep diving deeper.